The final 24 hours of Lisa Montgomery inside the federal prison walls. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're taking you into one of the most disturbing, controversial, and emotionally charged executions in recent American history. It's the final 24 hours of Lisa Montgomery, a woman sentenced to die for a crime so horrifying, yet whose last moments raised urgent questions about mental illness, justice, and what it truly means to be competent under the law. In a small death row cell in Terre Haute, Indiana, under the glow of unrelenting fluorescent lights, Lisa waited, not just for death, but for a last-minute miracle. Court rulings flipped, protesters held vigils, her lawyers raced the clock, and all the while Lisa sat silent, slipping deeper into herself. What happened that night was more than an execution. It was a legal and moral storm. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you might question everything you thought you knew about justice. Lisa Montgomery's last day alive began not with peace or closure, but with chaos. On January 12, 2021, she arrived at the Terre Haute Federal Death Chamber in Indiana after a long, heavily guarded transfer from a women's prison in Texas. Though she had only hours left, Lisa appeared disoriented, but strangely awake, caught in a whirlwind of court rulings, legal delays, and psychiatric concerns that cast a long shadow over her execution. Montgomery's case wasn't just a legal drama. It was a tragedy layered with trauma, broken systems, and one of the most haunting crimes in modern U.S. history. Legal battles until the final hour. Originally, Lisa's execution had been scheduled for December 2020. But when her attorneys tested positive for COVID-19, they couldn't complete their work, prompting a temporary delay. Federal law mandates a 90-day notice before execution. Yet Lisa's rescheduling came with only 35 days' notice, prompting a new legal challenge under the Federal Death Penalty Act. Her defense team argued not only procedural violations, but also mental incompetence. According to her attorneys, Lisa suffered from multiple mental disorders, depression, PTSD, and borderline personality disorder, all stemming from a life filled with unspeakable abuse, including childhood rape and trafficking. They claimed she was so far detached from reality, she couldn't grasp what was happening or why. District Judge James Hanlon issued a temporary stay on the grounds of mental incompetency, requiring a hearing before any execution could proceed. It was a rare judicial pause, perhaps a final sliver of hope. Inside her cell, Lisa remained silent, refusing food and sedatives. Guards described her as the most withdrawn inmate they'd seen. She scribbled brief notes to her lawyers and family. No screaming, no protests, just eerie quiet. She was under 24-hour death watch. Lights stayed on, cameras rolled, and guards monitored her every breath. A crime that shook the nation. But while Lisa's final hours stirred sympathy, they also reopened the pain of what had brought her there. In 2004, she committed a crime that horrified the country. Posing as a customer interested in buying a puppy, she drove to the home of Bobby Joe Stinnett, a pregnant dog breeder in Missouri. Once inside, Lisa strangled the young woman and performed a crude cesarean section, taking the baby girl and fleeing. Miraculously, the baby survived and was later reunited with family. But Bobby Joe's murder was brutal and calculated. Lisa was captured swiftly and confessed. Prosecutors argued that she had faked multiple pregnancies over the years and saw Bobby's child as a way to hold on to her crumbling marriage. The jury sentenced her to death. No one denied the brutality. But as the execution neared, the spotlight turned to Lisa's mental health. Her defenders insisted she had never received proper psychiatric care and that her crime was the product of untreated trauma, not evil. Spiritual guidance and a familiar face. In her final hours, Lisa was joined by attorney Amy Harwell and spiritual advisor John Francisco. Their presence offered what little calm she could grasp. John wasn't just a chaplain. He had been Lisa's childhood bus driver. His mother had even taught her in Sunday school. As the three sat together in quiet prayer, he pulled out a faded school photo Lisa had given him decades ago. He promised to be by her side in her last moments, singing, "Jesus Loves Me" and "Amazing Grace." But even this small gesture was denied. When the final order came, prison officials refused to let John inside the execution chamber, stating it was too late. Her attorney later called it a senseless cruelty, an unnecessary act that stripped away even the smallest dignity. the Supreme Court's final word. Just 1 hour before the scheduled 5 p.m. execution, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals issued another stay, citing potential violations in the scheduling process. It looked, once again, like Lisa might get a hearing. But time was running out. The federal government's legal team pushed hard, calling her defense tactics a sandbagging effort to delay justice. The Justice Department asked the Supreme Court to vacate all stays and proceed. The courtroom battle raged into the night. Meanwhile, Lisa sat frozen in her death watch cell as the clock ticked toward midnight, the symbolic deadline before President Trump left office. His successor, Joe Biden, had promised to halt all federal executions. If Lisa made it past midnight, she might live. Outside, reporters refreshed their news feeds in the cold, and protesters held candlelight vigils. Signs read, "Lisa's life matters," and "Stop the execution." The world waited. Finally, with only 30 minutes left in the window, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled. Lisa's appeals were denied. The Bureau of Prisons would proceed. The execution. At 1:31 a.m. on January 13th, just 91 minutes after midnight, Lisa Montgomery was pronounced dead. She became the first woman executed by the federal government in nearly 70 years. The 11th execution under the Trump administration in just 6 months. Witnesses described the chamber as clinical and cold. Lisa entered wearing glasses. Her attorney wasn't allowed in. Her spiritual advisor, who had promised to sing to her, was blocked at the door. As the chemicals began to flow, Lisa reportedly said nothing except a soft "no" when asked for final words. Her eyes closed. Her fingers tapped gently on the gurney straps. Her heart-shaped tattoo moved slightly with each tap. Moments later, she fell still. Aftermath. The debate over Lisa Montgomery's execution didn't end with her death. Legal experts, human rights groups, and mental health advocates all weighed in, some calling her death a grotesque miscarriage of justice, others affirming the punishment fit the crime. Critics pointed out that nearly a dozen judges, Democrats and Republicans alike, had agreed to stays at some point during her case, yet none of it ultimately changed her fate. The question that now lingers is not just whether Lisa Montgomery was guilty. She admitted what she did. The deeper question is whether she was truly competent to understand her punishment, and if the justice system honored the Constitution it claimed to uphold. In the stillness of that execution chamber, Lisa Montgomery became more than a headline. She became a symbol of the legal, moral, and emotional storm surrounding capital punishment in America. Her crime was undeniably horrific, but so was the life that shaped her. As the debate rages on, between justice for Bobby Joe and mercy for Lisa, we're left with a haunting question. Can a system deliver justice if it fails to recognize mental illness, trauma, and broken humanity until the very end? Montgomery's final moments were marked not by rage or redemption, but by silence, eerily symbolic of the silence that often surrounds women like her until it's too late. Whether you see her as a monster, a victim, or both, her story forces us to confront the uncomfortable. That sometimes justice isn't black and white, it's painfully gray. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. There's always more to uncover.